I call on Dr. Reed for a presentation of her 2026 financial year proposed budget.
Thank you, Chairman Frisch. And I want to begin this evening, as you know, the budget really is our backbone. It provides the resources for us to engage in all of the work that we've described this evening and all of the work that we describe over time. And thank you. I want to start by thanking our budget team. First, our board budget chair, Mr. Kyle McDaniel, and our budget vice chair, Ms. Rachna Sizemore-Heiser. And just the guidance that they've provided throughout this process has been just remarkable and very helpful. And also our Chief Finance Officer, Lee Burden, Matthew Norton, and Alice Whittington. Just big props to our finance department, I think the best in the country. So this evening, I'm going to work really hard to try to present this budget in a way that tells our story here in Fairfax County. And our story is one that's a story of incredible achievement and a reminder that these budget dollars represent more than charts and data. They represent the hopes and dreams of the children in this community and the hopes and dreams of the many, many families who moved to this community because of our Fairfax County Public Schools. So as we walk through the budget presentation this evening, I want to begin by acknowledging that our current situation, that we're facing a tremendous funding gap that is not of our creation or of our county's creation, honestly. Our team, Ms. Marin, our board, our elected board of supervisors have worked tirelessly to share the information, which I'll share a little later, about our JLARC funding and the lack of funding in terms of meeting this gap from our governor's budget that was recently presented. And I know that our Commonwealth lawmakers, those lawmakers from this area, continue to work hard to provide funds from the General Assembly. And we just want to acknowledge that there is a tremendous gap between what we believe is necessary and what we're actually receiving. And this is, I think, exacerbated by the changing needs and goals of our public school system and our children. The world is changing, technology, industry, the workplace, and so too what we present and prepare our children for needs to change and adjust. And these changes require resources. To have the success we're used to having requires resources to support the high expectations we hold here in Fairfax County. I also want to acknowledge that many of our citizens in Fairfax County do not currently have children in school. And to those citizens, I really want to speak to how important public school is, whether we have children currently in school or not. And as a recent grandparent myself, I know that there are many grandparents in this county who have a next generation that will be coming through our schools and are counting on the high quality and the tradition of excellence that we have maintained here in Fairfax County. And to sustain those high quality instructional opportunities require our support across the board, whether we have children in classes currently or not. And in recognizing a bit of the tax fatigue that is out there, because I mean, let's face it, things are more expensive today than they were a year ago, than they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And those cost escalations do create a budget impact, even just to maintain the level of support that we have needed, much less increase the level of support as we work to increase academic standards and provide those activities for our young people that are so important. Finally, just want to make sure that we understand that we're in a real competition for talent right now in this country. And as we think about outstanding educators in every role in the school division, we want the very best for our young people here in Fairfax County, and there's a cost to that. And for us to be able to compete with not just our regional colleagues, but our colleagues around the country, it's critical that we maintain salaries that are competitive, because as you'll see in some subsequent slides, those also provide the bedrock of what we consider respect for the profession and the hard work that occurs. So I want to make sure that I thread those themes this evening and make sure that in the coming days and weeks that we continue to come back to those key themes. One of the things I want to also remind our community is that these charts and the data I'm going to talk about this evening are representative of real children and real families and real hopes and dreams. And as we look at the investment we're thinking about making here and what I am providing in this needs-based budget, we're making huge gains in our academic work, and we're maintaining our excellence in terms of high expectations, which again will require high support. I want to remind our community and our board that this year we have 10% more students that were named as National Merit Commended Scholars than year over year. Last year, our SAT scores were 77, almost 80 points higher than the state average, and continue to outperform the global averages, even as we have more than 80% of our students taking the SAT, while the state has only around 50% of students taking the SAT. So we've provided access, opportunity, and continue to maintain higher achievement than our state and global peers. Also want to make sure that our families and communities know that 75% of our high school students complete at least one college equivalent course during their career with us. And our graduation rate at 94.6% far exceeds the state average and is a really proud data point for a division of our size. And finally, I wanted to make sure that I dialed in to one of our students who, as you know, was named Time Kid of the Year recently, and you're going to hear a little from him in Bekala. He is one of our students who's represented by this budget and budgets before us. Hemon's story was he was born in Ethiopia and came to Fairfax County as a preschool student who spoke no English. And his family, his mother is now a teacher for us, and he's been honored, as you know, for inventing a soap which treats skin cancer. And I will tell you, Heyman just also was recently honored at quite a star-studded event in Atlanta this past weekend, and spends many of his weekends at Johns Hopkins doing cancer research. And Heyman is one of thousands of students in our county who is doing incredible work day after day, inspired by incredible educators in the school division. And I continue, as I know you do, to be very proud of the work we do here and the many, many young people who are launched from this county who go out and change the world. I also want to share that one of the things that's really important as we think about resources and why our budget is going to be a slight increase over last year is we want to increase our academic expectations. And as we look at one example, in mathematics, we continue to outperform the Commonwealth in math, science, and reading with improvements in math and science, but even more important, we're close to 10% more students year over year of our 8th graders that are at least in Algebra 1 or higher, and almost 7% increase in our 5th graders taking advanced math. At this point, this continues to be a high focus area for us. We recognize nationally mathematics as a challenge, and we know that math accounts for 84% of our career choices now for children. It's critical that we invest in increasing and upping requirements in this critical content area, because we have to maintain high expectations and high support for all of our students. And as we think about mathematics, the credentialing of more staff to enable this to happen, the clarity around resources that you heard this evening are going to require resources, and it's a necessary body of work. I want to share that our student needs are changing. While our enrollment increases are flattening or leveling, in other words, we're projecting a 2% increase in enrollment, The increase, for example, in some of our student groups who do require extra supports continue to increase. And so as we have a higher need for certain specialized supports, for example, some of our students in special programs require smaller class sizes, require teachers at times who have more planning needs, require multiple assessment and perhaps supports that may require more funding and more resources. We have career coaches, social workers, therapists at times, and these are critical resource needs for our students, without which our students are not going to be able to achieve the high expectations that we have here in Fairfax County. As I move forward and think about the importance of our high expectations and those systems and structures that support them, I want to contemplate our class size comparison. And I think it's important to note that with the funding that we have been provided, Fairfax County Public Schools ranks 5th of 8 schools in our area when you look at students per classroom across all grade levels. And individually, for elementary, middle, and high, you can see that we do rank, 3rd, 6th, and 4th, but this does say that while our class sizes are a reasonable size, we're middle of the pack, that's with our current resource allocation. It's critical to keep up with those resources to maintain these class sizes to support that well-rounded education for all of our students. I want to remind our community about this data point, which we're particularly proud of. As you know, I think I've often talked about our hearts beating strongest when we're in schools. That's where the action happens. And I can say proudly that most of our funding is directly allocated to instruction, with 92.5% of our employees designated as school-based. And this is the highest among all of our WABE participants in the Washington, D.C. area. So we focus over 90% of our expenditures on school-based employees. Conversely, I want to share that our ratio of central management staff is 1.1% compared to 2 to 4% at surrounding jurisdictions. In other words, our administrative staffing is lean. It's well below our surrounding divisions, and that's because we've worked very hard to be fiscally responsible as a school division and make sure that we direct the bulk of our funds, over 90%, to our schools and classrooms and those that directly support our schools and classrooms. We believe that as a school division, most of our budget should be spent as close to the classroom as possible. One data point we haven't talked as much about over time is actually the amount of money that we would say the actual funding that FCPS puts per pupil and compare that to our surrounding divisions. And I would say at this point that based on budget numbers, we provide about $20,940 per pupil, which actually puts us number 5 of all the WABE districts. So if we, as an example, if we use the same classroom or the cost per pupil funding that Arlington County schools had, we would have an additional $769.5 million annually in our budget. If we were going to fund at that rate, that would enable us to hire 6,000 additional teachers to significantly reduce class sizes. Well, we're not likely to have that kind of funding, but what we can say is that given the funding we do have, we rank 5 out of 8, but it definitely is funding that we would certainly want to, we have our expectations for achievement to be higher than 5 of 8, and therefore we're going to need to resource our work at a higher than 5 out of 8 level. Let's take a look at our teacher salaries and why that's important. And I'm going to actually, if we could go back to the slide before, Madam Clerk. I presented this to educators this afternoon as a dry run, kind of a practice run. And one of the things our educators that I shared this with in a practice run said, they said, Dr. Reed, if you go to the board this evening and publicly talk about this, it makes it sound like no matter what, we're going to be able to continue to get high results year after year with perhaps less than adequate funding, and it's honestly not sustainable. And because here in Fairfax, people work longer, harder, I think care deeply, we also have to recognize that we need to adequately resource our programs and our staff so that we're not burning out our educators and that this is a sustainable workload as we work to maintain these expectations. So I want to make sure that I say that because I did commit to saying that this afternoon. So let's go to salaries, please. We're going to take a look at 3 levels of salaries. Last year, we looked at the master's level, and we were asked to make sure we looked at beginning teachers and teachers at the end of, or at the more experienced end, and I apologize, I need just a little bit of water. All right. So for beginning teacher salaries, currently we rank 5th of 8. With teachers starting salary in the master's lane. And after the compensation increases included in the budget I'm presenting this evening, we would likely rank 1st in starting teacher salary. This is important because we're all competing for a diminishing talent pool. And we want to make sure that as our students come out of university or teacher colleges and so forth, that we are a school division that recognizes the importance of the professional preparation that our educators have undergone and that we are able to provide that top salary for beginning teachers. We know that the quality of the educators in classrooms and schools is directly connected to the quality of the educational experience. That's why this is so important. Let's take a look at the midpoint of our teacher salaries. And this data is less positive, obviously. We currently rank 7th of 8 at the midpoint for the master's lane. And even with the compensation increases I'm proposing this evening that were part of our historic collective bargaining agreement, we will likely rank 5th in teacher salaries at the midpoint, even following the application of those salary increases. And let's look at the maximum teacher salaries. Currently, we rank 7th of 8 at the maximum lane for the master's lane, at the maximum for the master's lane. And we expect to remain the same, 7 out of 8, even with a 7% increase in salary based on the collective bargaining agreement. And a lot of this is largely due to a lesser number of steps on our salary schedule, and we top out at 25, and many of our surrounding jurisdictions have 30 or more steps. So we are going to be a bit challenged at this lane as well, even with the 7% salary increase possibility. So let's talk a little bit about striving for smart savings. It's so important that we talk about the work we've done to try to trim our budget and trim our initiatives to become lean and still work towards maintaining the support for our high expectations. One of the things that we really had to reckon with is, as we think about trimming our budget and making sure that we've provided some type of cost cutting and clear direction around being more, trying to be more efficient and look at reductions to afford some of the collective bargaining agreement dollars, as well as our continuing initiatives. We realize 93% of our positions are school-based, and that makes it very difficult to make cuts without impacting the student experience. I will say, year over year, we have cut $51.3 million, which is 1.4% of our budget, because we no longer are receiving ESSER dollars, and those dollars we either sunset initiatives or sunset programs, and those post-pandemic needs are still persisting. So we have Collapse programs, we've also said that there are no new initiatives. We're only funding those that we have currently have in motion, and that's really important for our community to understand. We want to be and intend to be and believe we are fiscally responsible and good stewards of the money that our taxpayers work so hard to provide to us. So our need for high quality instructional resources continue, and we are going to hope to continue to see future savings in training and professional development based on the fact that if we maintain workspaces, class sizes, and salaries, we will retain our educators. And when we retain our educators, it costs less for new professional development repeatedly, new training, and in general provides a better educational experience. And I'm proud to say that with our board's commitment year over year, for the first time in 4 years, our year-to-year teacher retention rate exceeded 90% last year, and the division retained almost 400 more teachers in 2024 than we had in 2023. So that is a significant number of staff that did not need to be retrained but are excited to continue the work here in Fairfax County. So that type of efficiency is so critical to our mission-driven work. We also continue our Baldridge efficiency review, where we're taking each department and running through lines to see how we can tighten, which is part of how we were able to arrive at our $51.3 million budget cut year over year, and again, our continued commitment to not begin new initiatives at a time where we recognize we have to fund our priorities. I want to remind our community and board that our proposed budget, our needs-based budget that I'm presenting this evening, aligns with our strategic plan, both our 5 goals and our 4 pillars. And we are a very large division, the 9th largest in the country with over 180,000 students. This framework, this strategic framework, allows all of our schools, our departments, and our offices to move in the same direction. And with that alignment, we'll continue to see funding efficiencies and efficiencies in how we use and spend our time. So I want to share at this point our budget priorities to meet the changing needs of our students, to meet the changing needs in our workplace. We have budget priorities that must provide competitive compensation for all of our employees in Fairfax County. The changing needs often require different resources which have a gear-up time, and these changing needs will continue probably in an exponential flywheel movement. We need to continue empowering our educators to provide differentiated services, and the multi-year initiatives the board is committed to must be seen to their logical impact end. So I will share that the budget summary I'm presenting this evening provides an FY2026 school operating fund budget totaling $4 billion, which is a net increase of $297.1 million, or 7.9% over the FY25 budget. The county transfer request is actually an increase of $268.3 million, or a 10.4%, which is a slight decrease from last year's requested percentage, which was 10.5%. I will also say that we've worked between the fiscal forecast numbers of $275 million to get it down to $268.3 million, and this would be the county transfer request for the needs-based budget that I'm proposing this evening. We are looking, actually let's stay there for just a minute, the state revenue, could we go back to, thank you. The state revenue, we look like we are expecting $23.2 million. The federal revenue we expect to decline by $1 million, which is IDEA and Perkins dollars. And this is in a key factor here with our beginning balance. So the request for our county transfer is $268.3. I will make, or I will share that the Board of Supervisor request, again, is 10.4% increase, which is a slight decrease. Most of the WABE participants' budgets have yet to be released. However, we do know that Loudoun and Montgomery County in Maryland have released, and they are requesting local transfer increases of 9.7% and 13.4% respectively. So we feel like the 10.4% increase is well within a reasonable expectation and satisfies or meets our needs-based budget request. So next slide, please. As we look at the compensation adjustments, I want to be very clear about why competitive compensation matters. And I want to share just a bit about one of our educators who happens to be the 2024 Washington Post Teacher of the Year, Laura Centuria, who is a 4th grade teacher at Colin Powell Elementary School. And she received this award because of her excellence in inspiring learning, encouraging individual growth, and demonstrating subject matter expertise by fostering collaboration and leading by example. Teachers like Laura Centuria and many, many, many others, thousands and thousands of our educators, are committed to the mission-driven work we're doing here in Fairfax County Public Schools, and we were able to negotiate in the last calendar year, a collective bargaining agreement, which is historic here, our first in Fairfax County, which would provide a 7% compensation increase. Also transportation and food service salary enhancements and health rate changes. This is going to be the change from FY2025 budget is $240.8 million. There are also retirement rate changes and the base savings from turnover. Again, $213.7 million would be the specific amount of money here related to providing competitive compensation. And this, again, is based on the collective bargaining agreement, which I really am proud of the team for negotiating. I also want to just point out that this 7% increase for employees is very much so in line with our surrounding divisions. For example, Loudoun County recently is asking for a 6.5% increase, 6.5% in salaries, and Prince William County is asking for 7%. So we're right in the ballpark if we want to simply maintain competitive salaries within our region. As we think about meeting our community's shifting and changing needs, it's not just our young people that are changing, our community is changing. We know our schools are the center of our community. We know that companies settle in spaces where schools are effective because workforce development is a critical bridge to the economic drivers here in Fairfax County. I want to remind us that the funding of $23.6 million represents the recurring costs of baseline or of adjustments for quarterly fund review and other baseline adjustments such as substitute teacher incentives, and you can read through the topics on the slide. Further, we have $20 million, which includes 207.9 positions to impact these student need adjustments that are driven primarily by increases in special program services, as well as routine funds to support summer school, major maintenance, contractual services, and existing lease, and so on. Now let's take a look at our multi-year initiatives. So as you can see, we have inclusive preschool. And again, these are very similar. These are programs that were on the deck last year for budget. They're a continuation of funding. We've made commitments, and we need to see those through. And these commitments are for a total of $4 million. And this is the FY2026 proposed budget, for example, represents the third year of a multi-year implementation to establish a dedicated family liaison with benefits at an additional 50 school sites this year, in addition to the topics addressed. And these budgeted positions are established through a position conversion of existing hourly positions and therefore won't require additional funding, so they're not represented here. But I know those are a commitment that our board has made and want to make sure that I note that that's something that we're doing. We know learning happens best in community, and there's never been a more important time for our family liaisons and their work than a time such as this. So let's look at our targeted investments at this time. We do want to make sure that our community understands that we have been listening, and we want to make sure that we're able to devote funds to safety and security. There are different topics listed, as well as the differentiated learning credentials. We have a high need for micro-credentialing and support around universal design for learning, multilingual learner initiatives, and as I mentioned earlier, if we're going to continue to make the progress we need to make in mathematics, we're going to have more teachers algebra credentialed than we currently have, and that's going to require resources. We cannot put a stake in the ground around increasing academic expectations and not support the professional development and resources necessary to continue to increase academic expectations. It's not good enough to just continue what we've always done. We have to put a stake in the ground and say that mathematics, again, is going to be impacting 84% of career choices. We have to increase our expectations in that content area especially, which will require resources. So I want to just share some of the funding needs not explicitly addressed in this budget. We do have budget to continue our middle school sports, but we are looking to try to do an expansion, and we'll have to see where that's going to be possible. We have also in this particular budget not addressed additional funding to accelerate addressing the maintenance backlog, which continues to increase at 8% a year. And I will say that some of my concerns around the budgeting process is that in addressing some of this maintenance backlog, I don't want to take money from our classrooms, and therefore it is so critical, and again, this needs-based budget concept, that we effectively and efficiently address what we need to meet our educational outcomes, even as we still have our maintenance backlog that's rising. We're not planning to lower class sizes. We haven't yet looked at middle school start times or electric buses and jet goals. So those are things yet to be contemplated as we think about future budgets. So let's take a look at the revenue overview. And again, this is sort of where all the different buckets of money come to us. We have state, federal, other, and the county transfer request. And the other, in thinking about that, represents an increase due to projected increase related to tuition at Thomas Jefferson. But the county transfer request, as I mentioned earlier, is set at $268.3 million, and that will create a total revenue increase of $297.1. The next slide is a historical slide of the county transfer history, and we went back to 2016, where it looked like, really, when we think about the percentage of revenue of the county, and we talked a little about this last year, where there was a 5-year historical trend of about 52.7%, and that 52.7% down to 51.5% represents a $64 million gap last year. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to bridge that gap this year and be able to fully fund our transfer from the county. And we appreciate the support and the focus on public education that our county partners share with us, and appreciate certainly their efforts, and we'll look forward to continuing to collaborate with them. I have spoken to our county executive, and I know that it's important that we collaborate with our county partners as we develop our budget moving forward. I do want to call out JLARC. And just, I know this is a slide that we have talked a lot about, But I just want to remind our community that Virginia school divisions do receive less funding per student than the 50-state average, and also our regional average. And again, this is an opportunity to take a look at Maryland, West Virginia, Kentucky, and Virginia, which again, we sit at 14% below the national average for funding per pupil. Again, we don't have expectations that are below the national average because our students are performing above the global average. So it's not sustainable, however, without adequate resources. So we believe this needs-based budget will provide those. In round numbers for the community, if JLARC was fully funded or our schools were fully funded, that would be about $3,100 per student, or a total of $568.7 million. So what you see on the screen is our General Assembly's work right now, and there are several key areas that they're looking at. The elimination or incremental raising of the support cap, exploring enhanced support for special education focused on the proposed percentage add-on to special education based on student level of need. And additionally, the subcommittee highlighted the importance of addressing data and infrastructure needs to provide better cost data for the recommendations. However, at this time, we don't have any concrete legislative reforms that have been adopted, and we continue to wait on the outcome of those JLARC deliberations. I want to say that thriving schools equal an economic prosperity. We know that the schools are the center of a community, and we know that investing in excellence for our schools invests in excellence for our county. And I encourage each of you to think about what kind of a community would you like us to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? What will history look back and say about this group, these decision makers, in terms of what we did to prepare our young people for the next decade and decades ahead? Our community support helps anchor FCPS as our region's education destination for students, families, and staff. High-quality schools bring new residents, better workforce development, new businesses, increased opportunities for student upward mobility. Education, an excellent education, has often been talked about as the first rung to upward mobility. Increased property values and reduced social costs. So we are grateful and continue to be grateful to our partnership with our Board of Supervisors, with whom we know we have a shared interest in the excellence of our schools. And we appreciate our state leaders and elected leaders who share our belief in public education, and look forward to their continued financial support of our community's most important asset, our children. So here is a way to stay involved. Attend school board meetings. We're going to continue to have, we have a work session upcoming this evening. The board will not be asking questions. This is my presentation, but we'll be having a work session and many other conversations about the budget. So please take a moment to learn about the critical needs of this great school system and why we must continue to support our educators, our support staff, and our students. Today is just the beginning of the conversation. And so we'll have many opportunities for board discussion. These dates above are listed as a point of reference. And we do have a work session to discuss student needs and compensation in more detail on February 4th. I know you're going to have many questions at that work session. And as always, the community and obviously the board and Board of Supervisors are able to submit budget questions via our normal process. Thank you for your time and attention. This is the most important work happening in our country at this time. It is critical work, and it is work that's transformative. There's never been a more important time to invest in public education, because together all things are possible. So I'd like to finish the budget proposal with a word from our students. At the end of the day, that's why we're here. That's why we're doing the budget, and that's why we need to continue contemplating the critical nature and the transformative difference that our educators here in this county make each and every day. So, Madam Clerk, we'll give Haman the last word.
Now we're doing so many different types of labs in science and bio and chemistry. There's always been this kind of choose your own adventure, but at the same time, be innovative, be creative, and just give a great final product. And those experiences are what have kind of shaped my curiosity today. So a huge shout out to Fairfax County. All my teachers, I've been here since kindergarten. It's just been a wonderful experience. So